A misadventure while traveling. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about a misadventure that happened to me while traveling. We all know that traveling can be fun and exciting, but sometimes things don't go as planned. In this story, you'll hear about one of those times when everything went wrong. But don't worry, it's all part of the adventure. This story will help you practice your English listening skills, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. The exciting start. It all started when I decided to take a trip to a beautiful country that I had never visited before. I was so excited. I had planned everything perfectly. I booked my flight, found a nice hotel, and made a list of all the places I wanted to visit. I packed my suitcase with all the things I needed: clothes, a camera, a map, and some snacks for the journey. I couldn't wait to start my adventure. On the day of my flight, I woke up early, full of energy and excitement. I got ready quickly, grabbed my suitcase, and headed to the airport. Everything was going smoothly. I arrived at the airport on time, checked in my luggage, and passed through security without any problems. I even had time to sit down, have a coffee, and relax before boarding the plane. When it was time to board, I walked to the gate and showed my boarding pass. I found my seat on the plane, put my bag in the overhead compartment, and sat down. The plane took off, and I looked out the window, excited to see a new place. The flight was long, but I didn't mind. I watched some movies, listened to music, and even took a short nap. I was ready for my adventure. The unexpected problem. After a few hours, the plane landed at my destination. I was so happy to finally arrive. I got off the plane and walked to the baggage claim area to pick up my suitcase. I waited for a few minutes as the bags started to come out. People were picking up their luggage and leaving. I kept waiting. But my suitcase didn't appear. I started to get a little worried. I waited and waited, but my suitcase never came. I went to the lost luggage desk and explained my problem. The staff at the desk were very nice. They asked me for my flight details and described what my suitcase looked like. After checking their system, they told me that my suitcase had been sent to the wrong airport. I couldn't believe it. My suitcase was in another country, far away from where I was. They assured me that they would do their best to find my suitcase and send it to me as soon as possible. But they also told me that it could take a few days. I was shocked. I had nothing with me except my backpack, which only had my passport, some money, and my phone. All my clothes, toiletries, and other things were in my suitcase. Trying to stay positive. At first, I felt really upset. I didn't know what to do. But then I took a deep breath and told myself that everything would be okay. After all, I was on vacation in a beautiful country. I decided to stay positive and make the best of the situation. I went to the hotel, checked in, and explained what had happened. The hotel staff were very understanding and gave me some basic toiletries, like a toothbrush and soap, to help me get through the first night. The next morning, I woke up and tried to think of what to do. I didn't have any clothes except for the ones I was wearing. So, I decided to go shopping. I found a nearby store and bought some new clothes. They weren't exactly what I had packed in my suitcase, but they would do for now. I also bought a few other things that I needed, like a charger for my phone, since mine was in the lost suitcase. Even though it wasn't how I had planned my trip, I tried to stay positive. I reminded myself that this was just part of the adventure. I still had my health, my money, and my passport, so I could continue my trip. Exploring the city. With my new clothes and a fresh attitude, I decided to go out and explore the city. The city was beautiful, with old buildings, colorful markets, and friendly people. I walked around, took pictures with my new camera, and tried some local food. The food was delicious, and the people were very welcoming. Even though I didn't have my suitcase, I was still having a good time. I visited some of the famous landmarks that I had read about before my trip. One of my favorite places was a big, old castle on top of a hill. The view from the top was amazing. I could see the whole city from there. I spent hours just walking around, exploring different parts of the city, and taking in the sights. However, as the day went on, I started to feel tired. The stress of losing my suitcase was catching up with me. I decided to go back to the hotel and rest. When I got back, I checked with the hotel staff to see if there was any news about my suitcase. Unfortunately, there was no update. My suitcase was still lost. Another problem arises. The next day, I woke up and decided to go on a day trip to a nearby town that I had read about. I took a bus early in the morning and arrived at the town after a few hours. The town was small but very charming. There were cobblestone streets, little shops, and a beautiful river running through the middle. I spent the day walking around, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. But then, something else went wrong. As I was walking by the river, I accidentally slipped and fell into the water. It wasn't deep, but I got completely soaked. My clothes were wet, my shoes were wet, and even my phone got a little wet. I quickly got out of the water and tried to dry myself off, but I was still very wet and cold. I felt so embarrassed and frustrated. First, I lost my suitcase, and now I was wet and cold in a strange town. I didn't have any extra clothes with me, so I had to walk around in my wet clothes until they dried. I found a small cafe and sat there for a while, drinking hot tea and trying to warm up. The people in the cafe were very kind. They even offered me a blanket to help me stay warm. Finding help. After I dried off a little, I decided to head back to the city where my hotel was. When I got back, I went straight to the hotel and asked again about my suitcase. This time, the staff had some good news. They told me that my suitcase had finally arrived at the airport and that it would be delivered to the hotel the next morning. I was so relieved. The next morning, my suitcase finally arrived. I was so happy to see it. I quickly opened it to make sure everything was there, and thankfully, nothing was missing. I finally had my clothes, my toiletries, and everything else I had packed. I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. After that, I was able to enjoy the rest of my trip without any more problems. I visited more places, tried more food, and even made some new friends along the way. The people I met were very friendly, and they were always interested in hearing about my misadventure with the lost suitcase. The second half of my trip, with my suitcase finally back, I felt more comfortable and ready to continue exploring. I decided to take a day tour to visit some famous sites outside of the city. I joined a group tour, and we traveled by bus to a beautiful national park. The park was full of lush greenery, tall mountains, and clear blue lakes. It was like stepping into a postcard. As we hiked through the park, I met some other travelers who were also on the tour. We quickly became friends and started talking about our travel experiences. They were from different parts of the world, and we shared stories about the places we had visited. It was so nice to meet new people and hear about their adventures. We spent the whole day exploring the park. We saw stunning waterfalls, walked through dense forests, and even spotted some wildlife. It was a day full of adventure and beauty, and it made me forget all about the troubles I had faced earlier in the trip. I felt so lucky to be there, surrounded by nature and new friends. A surprise invitation. That evening, after returning to the city, I got a surprise invitation from one of the friends I had made on the tour. She invited me to join her and her group of friends for dinner at a local restaurant. I was excited to accept the invitation. It was a chance to experience the local culture and food in a way that I wouldn't have been able to on my own. We met at the restaurant, which was a cozy place with traditional decor. The menu was full of local dishes that I had never tried before. My new friends recommended some of their favorite dishes, and I decided to be adventurous and try them all. The food was amazing. There were so many new flavors and ingredients that I had never tasted before. We spent the evening eating, talking, and laughing. It was one of the best meals I had ever had. After dinner, we walked around the city together. The streets were lively with people enjoying the night, and the city was beautifully lit up. We visited a few more places, including a popular local market where I bought some souvenirs to take home. It was such a fun and memorable night, and I felt grateful to have met such wonderful people during my trip. A final challenge. Just when I thought my trip was back on track, I faced one more challenge. On the last day of my trip, I woke up with a sore throat and a headache. I had caught a cold. It wasn't surprising, given that I had fallen into the river and spent some time in wet clothes. I felt tired and weak. But I didn't want to waste my last day in the city. I decided to take it easy and spend the day relaxing. I visited a few more places that were on my list, but I took my time and didn't push myself too hard. I also made sure to drink plenty of water and eat healthy food to help my body recover. Even though I wasn't feeling my best, I still enjoyed my last day in the city. I took a slow walk through a beautiful park, visited a museum, and sat by the river, just taking in the peaceful atmosphere. By the evening, I was feeling a little better, but I was ready to go home. I packed my suitcase, checked out of the hotel, and headed to the airport. The flight back home was uneventful, and I was relieved to finally be back in my own bed, where I could rest and recover from my cold. Looking back on the adventure, when I look back on that trip, I realized that it wasn't the perfect vacation that I had planned, but it was an adventure that I will never forget. Sometimes things go wrong when we travel, but those moments can teach us important lessons. I learned to stay positive even when things don't go as planned. I also learned that it's important to be flexible and to make the best of any situation. Even though losing my suitcase was stressful, it helped me see that I didn't need all those things to have a good time. What mattered most was the experience of being in a new place, meeting new people, and seeing new things. In the end, those are the memories that stay with us. I also learned that traveling is about more than just visiting new places. It's about the people you meet, the experiences you have, and the challenges you overcome. Every misadventure is just another story to tell, and it adds to the richness of your travel experiences. Conclusion. So, if you ever find yourself in a situation where things don't go as planned while traveling, remember to stay calm and positive. Every misadventure is just part of the journey. You might even look back on it one day and laugh, just like I do now when I think about my lost suitcase and my fall into the river. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope it helped you practice your English listening skills and that you enjoyed hearing about my misadventure. Remember, traveling is all about the journey, not just the destination. Keep learning, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep having fun. Good luck with your English studies, and I wish you many wonderful adventures in the future.